This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, where passionate fans make powerful content. Check out theclashingconferences.com and join the squad today. What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for June 26, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the podcast, a big Thursday show today. So let's get right into the top story. And it was VJ Edgecombe at number 3. Love this pick. I've been talking about him for a few weeks now. I think he was the perfect fit, one of the more athletic players in the draft. I think of all of the guys they could have taken there at 3, he was the guy to go with. It wasn't Ace Bailey. Now, look, Ace Bailey might be a great NBA player, but I think for the Sixers, with where they are right now, Edgecombe's the way to go. Way on his way to developing to be a good 3-and-D player, great defender. I think his athleticism and ability to drive to the basket is going to help Jarrett McCain out. I can see him driving, kicking out to shoot. Uh, I really like this. I feel like this is a low risk, high reward sort of pick for the Sixers. It's just a matter of where his ceiling is going to be. And the Sixers were in a very unique situation yesterday where they're playing it out for next year, figuring out what they can do with Joe and the core they have, Joe and PG. But at the same time, they're building toward the future. So if you have a young core of Jarrett McCain, Tyrese Maxey, and VJ Edgecombe, I like that. You throw in Quentin Grimes. Maybe they exercise the player option on Lonnie Walker. I'd like to see and a lot. So basically, this season is going to come down to one thing, and that's Joe's knees. I think Paul George will bounce back. I don't think anybody's ever going to see the prime Paul George that led to him getting that contract. But I think he can be a good player. Hopefully, he can serve as sort of a mentor to some of these younger guys. But it all comes down to Joe's knees. And I think if Joe is able to play at 70, 75% of what he was in a limited role, I'd like to see more of a Dembona sort of take on that backup role that we used to see. I can't think of his name now. Either way, come in, get some good minutes, and take the pressure off of Joe. I think there's enough scoring on the team now that it doesn't have to be Joe going out and scoring 35 points a game. And as long as his knees are healthy, the East is wide open. I mean, the East is there for the taking. Daryl Morey spoke yesterday and said that it looks like Joe is targeting being ready to come back at training camp. So between that and Paul George's mentality, I think we could be. Listen, I know, but they could be a surprise dark horse team in the East. I mean, it's there for the taking. The Knicks are a hot mess. The Pacers are injured. The Bucks are injured. Uh, the Celtics are injured. So it could be a wide open, very fun season this year. And another last thing on VJ Edgecombe, I like the fact that he said it, his mom said it, and his brother said it. They were very emotional during the interview after he was drafted, but they talked about coming from nothing. And I think that obviously it could always go south once you start getting everything, but it seems like this dude is well grounded. So I don't necessarily see him being sort of the prima donna. And I think he's excited to be there, wants to show what he can do. It seems as though he's a hard worker. So I am ecstatic to the moon about this pick. I love it. Hopefully, and just with doing some research for today's This Day, we're doing a lot of NBA draft stuff. And just going back to some of those teams with Joel within the past like 5 to 8 years, the Sixers are fun when they're good and they're playing. And I think we could have a fun year coming up this year. And I know This is all Lucy with the football. This is the crazy ex-girlfriend. I get it. But listen, as of right now, sign me up for the Sixers. Play the song. Play the song. Second round is tonight. Sixers have the 35th pick. Still a lot of things they could do with that. And to his credit, maybe the Paul George contract aside, maybe holding out and trading for James Harden aside, although you could argue that James Harden came in and did what he was supposed to do. It just didn't work out with the other pieces. Daryl Morey has drafted pretty well since he's been here with the Sixers. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's able to do tonight, whether that is trading, getting more assets, or what. But I'm pumped. I'm pumped, especially if Joe's going to be back by training camp. Play the song. And then the other team in town that played yesterday, the Phillies, man. And I said this a couple weeks ago. The team that is able to put up runs in bunches, go toe-to-toe with the Mets the way they are, that is who this Phillies team is. The team that is playing right now in Houston, who hasn't scored a run, who has been shut out for 19 consecutive innings, that is also this team. It's going to be the ebbs and flows all season. But man, you got the bases loaded with one or no outs, and you can't get a run in. And it's a shame because they wasted another strong starting performance by Chris Wheeler or Zach Wheeler. The bullpen was solid. You give up 2 runs and you get shut out. Phillies have only given up 3 runs in the first 2 games of this series and have only managed like 12 hits in 2 games or something around there. So we'll see. Hopefully they can salvage a game to this afternoon. Christopher Sanchez on the mound. There's still a half game up on the Mets. So with a big series coming up this weekend against the Braves. And again, it's always been this way with this team, dating back to 2022. When the bats go cold, they all go cold together. And I don't know if there's a single player you can trade for that's going to change that. Maybe Bryce coming back, possibly he took batting practice yesterday, this weekend will help. But Dombrowski did talk to Jason Stark. He talked about a lot of things. He said he's looking possibly for lineup help from the young guys. And yesterday, Justin Crawford tore it up. So maybe bring Crawford up. Maybe Otto Kemp can continue to get some playing time, but it doesn't look like he's going to go after an outfielder. Mentioned using the starters as relievers. So we'll see. He says you got to get through make the postseason, but maybe come August into September, they might start getting those guys that they're going to move. He wouldn't mention any names, but moving those guys who are going to be going to the bullpen, starting to get them work in. He mentioned Alvarado being a key piece, and I was listening to at the gym yesterday, the afternoon show on WIP, and they had Larry Anderson on. And he mentioned that even though he's not going to be able to play in the postseason, having Alvarado there as another guy to use in the bullpen is going to help the other guys out, because he mentioned 93 between him, David West, and Mitch Williams. They were worn out. And when they traded for Roger Mason, it certainly helped them out. So even to give those guys some rest, I was kind of against Alvarado, but hearing it from Larry Anderson, who was in a similar position, his perspective, okay, Alvarado, use him in a 6th inning or a 7th inning to give some of those guys some rest. But we'll see. Doesn't look like he's going to go after bats. Maybe that means he's going to go after all the bats. I don't know. But he seems content on trying to add a back-end bullpen piece, but at the same time, using the guys that he has in the starting rotation in the bullpen. So we'll see how that plays out. But hopefully they can just salvage a game today. And even if they can't salvage a game, could we score a run possibly? Just a thought. All right, let's get some housekeeping. And before I get into the typical housekeeping, yesterday I mentioned, talking Sixers, mentioned about Porzingis possibly getting traded. That trade did in fact happen while either overnight and I missed it, or while we were recording. He's going to the Hawks, and bang, bang, George Niang. It was a 3-team trade, but George Niang is going to the Celtics. I always liked George Niang, but be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mott on Twitter and TikTok, on Instagram at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mott, and continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. If you want to see highlights, clips, photos, pictures, go to my social media, including my Facebook and LinkedIn for information on that. Tomorrow's show will be recorded on location. I'm praying that the sound is better than what it has been. I'll be down in Virginia to golf for the weekend, and hopefully, just hopefully, AI will be able to find us tomorrow to spend Fridays with AI. All right, yesterday's trivia question, and I will give a shout out to myself, pat on the back. The trivia question yesterday, we talked about Aaron Nola striking out 10 Mets in a row back in 2021, tying a major league record. My question was what other two pitchers in the national, or what other two pitchers in the league have struck out 10 straight batters? That would be Tom Seaver and Corbin Burns, who did it 6 weeks after Aaron Nola did it. That was the question on the Philly Stump the Fan yesterday. The question was Tom Seaver struck out 10 batters in a row back in 1970. Which Phillies did it in 2021? If you are a current listener and you happen to be watching that yesterday, you know the answer to that. But Tom Seaver and Corbin Burns are the other two to strike out 10 straight. Union extended their unbeaten streak to 13 games now. It's 11 straight in MLS play. Bruno Damiani scored in the 10th minute, and it was enough as the Union stay atop the Eastern Conference standings. It was also announced yesterday that Ty Barabo and Jacob Glesnes are going to be representing the MLS in the All-Star game later in July. So good recognition for those guys. But the Union, 13 in a row without being beaten. They play again on Sunday. Want to show off your Philly pride without saying a word? Philly Goat has you covered. From tees, hoodies, shoes, and hats, their gear screams Philly louder than an Eagles fan at the vet. Whether you're tailgating in South Philly or trying to flex down the Jersey Shore, do it in style. Hit up phillygoat.com, use the promo code Jim Montgomery, and get 10% off your order. Philly Goat, because being Philly ain't a choice, it's a way of life. Go Birds! And listen, these shirts, I'm telling you, you can help out Chop. Get the Fansicle, the Bryce Pop, and not that Bryce Pop, but the Bryce Pop and the Fansicle. But the Philly Fanatic shirt that benefits Chop is a really cool. It's a design by uh, the the daughter of the Philly Goat owner, and she designed it in an effort to raise money to help Chop. So if you can, go buy that shirt and help out Chop. As you never know, when we've spent many times and many hours at Chop with my son when he was younger due to his hip dysplasia. So anything you can do to help Chop, I support that. All right. Time for our new segment. Last week we talked about the 2010 Phillies. It is time for Throwback Thursday, sponsored by Beach Caddy. Let Beach Caddy take the stress out of your Jersey Shore vacation. Use the code Jimbo for 10% off your bellhop and beach cart rental services. All right. Last week we talked about the 86 draft and how they traded Moses. They traded the number one pick. Could have had Brad Daugherty. Ended up with Jeff Rulin for 5 games. Great. But they did have plenty of chances to rebound from that draft night. But when you miss 8, 9 draft picks in a row, you tend to go through what the Phillies did in the late 80s, or the Sixers did in the late 80s, early 90s. So just to kind of wanted to just go over it's NBA draft week. So wanted to go over the misses. 1987, they took Christian Welp from Germany, who was a center, hoping that he was going to be the replacement for Moses. He wasn't. They passed up on Mark Jackson and Reggie Lewis. 1988, they took Charles Smith. They did trade him for Hersey Hawkins, who was a nice piece, wasn't a superstar piece that they needed. 89, they took Kenny Payne. And in this draft, they traded and swapped picks with the Seattle Supersonics, passing up on Dana Barrows, Sean Kemp, and BJ Armstrong. But hey, we got Kenny Payne. 1990, they traded for Rick Mahorn. Okay, that wasn't a bad trade, but Rick Mahorn was near the end of his career, the old thump and bump. In 91, they traded the pick for Manute Bowl. We know how that worked out. And then this is where it just started to get ridiculous. Uh, 92, they drafted Clarence Witherspoon. Wasn't a great draft after the top three, but they could have had Latrell Sprewell, who went 24th. But yeah, we got old Clarence Witherspoon. 93 was Sean Bradley. Don't even want to talk about that. That was just the most ridiculous pick ever. That was worse than any of the free agents that Sam Hinkie brought in during the process era. 94, they drafted Sharon Wright. Could have had Eddie Jones. 95 was Jerry Stackhouse in number 3. Now, Jerry Stackhouse wasn't a bad pick for the Sixers, but they could have had Rasheed Wallace. They could have had Kevin Garnett. And then obviously in 96, they took AI. But imagine if they one of those picks would have worked out, just one. That's all they needed. And I'm not sure if they felt that if Jerry Stackhouse made his, it was very unclear when I researched this, but Jerry Stackhouse and AI could have been a good backcourt. Uh, but I don't know. But imagine if just one, maybe two of those picks had panned out. We never would have had to go through that whole pre Allen Iverson thing. And maybe, just maybe, it would have been different. So let's hope that VJ Edgecombe works out the way we're hoping it is. And that brings us to June 26th. On this day in Philly sports history, two franchise altering draft picks were selected by the Sixers. First, in 1996, after winning the lottery from the second position pre lottery, the Sixers selected Allen Iverson from Georgetown with the number one overall pick, teaming him up with Jerry Stackhouse, who eventually was traded the next season to Detroit. They claim it wasn't a good fit, but AI never really had his Robin. And you could go back and forth and discuss whether that was on AI, whether that was on the front office, Billy King and Larry Brown. But this draft pick turned out to be a great one. Allen Iverson became one of the Sixers' all-time greats, one of the all-time greats in the NBA. He is in the Hall of Fame. His jersey numbers retired by the Sixers. And of course, we had ups and downs with AI throughout his time here, going back to the practice and some of the things with showing up to practice late, showing up to games late. But one thing was always certain with Allen Iverson: you knew he was going to give 150% when the game was on the line. And I think that's the one thing that, to me, is Allen Iverson's lasting legacy is just his heart and warrior mentality, where he was going out there, he was giving his all, and you were in for a show. And we kind of forget sometimes that we had it good with Allen Iverson. Yes, we never got to the promised land. The high point was that 2001 run, which was a magical run. Other than maybe the '08 World Series and the two Super Bowl wins for the Eagles, never seen the city come together like that behind a sports team. Possibly the '93 Phillies, but I was younger then. But AI, 7-time All NBA, 11-time All Star, 4-time scoring champ, MVP, Rookie of the Year, all 75th anniversary team, one of the all time greats, drafted number one on this day back in 1996. And then fast forward 18 years to 2014, and the Sixers actually had the second pick pre lottery, dropped down to the third pick. And this was prime process years where I remember this well. We were going winless for Wiggins, trying to get Andrew Wiggins during this draft. He was the prized possession. He went number one to Cleveland. Jabari Parker went number two to Milwaukee, leaving the Sixers with a difficult decision. They took Joel Embiid, who had the back issues, sat out 2 full seasons before he even played. And once he played, man, these teams were fun. If you think back, these teams pre them getting second round after second round after second round, they were fun. Joe went on to become a 7-time All-Star, also won an MVP, 2-time scoring champ, 3-time All-Defensive Team, 5-time All-NBA. And obviously with Joe, the legacy is the injuries. Some of them early in his career were him just being raw and not necessarily knowing the nuances of the game. Some of them were freak injuries, like getting elbowed. Like, who fractures their orbital bone twice? Who gets Bell's palsy? Like, some of these were just absolutely bizarre injuries. But the proof is in the pudding. He wasn't necessarily or hasn't been a clutch performer in the playoffs. He's had clutch moments, but over the course of his series, it just hasn't had it done. But on this day in 2014, Sixers draft Joel Embiid, number 3 overall. And then in 1996, they draft Allen Iverson, number 3. And I think I said that wrong. 2014 was Joel Embiid. 1996 was Allen Iverson. I feel like I said that wrong, but either way. But that does lead to today's trivia question. The Sixers have had the number 3 pick 4 times. Last night, they drafted VJ Edgecombe. Who did the Sixers take the other 3 times they had the number 3 pick? If you're paying attention earlier in the show, you know one of them. But who else have the Sixers taken number 3 overall to go along with VJ Edgecombe? Hit me up on the Discord channel. That link is live in the description, the very first one. Come over, have some good Philly sports talk. Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line, 267-495-8531, or any of my social media. But what other 3 players have the Sixers selected number 3 overall? And then finally today, our greatest individual season in Philly sports history. Yesterday, we had a close one, and I figured this one would be close. And with 51% of the vote, Roy Halladay from 2010 beats Jimmy Rollins from 2007. Hard to argue with that. I knew it was a 4-5 matchup. It was going to be close. Thank you to everyone who voted in that poll. Today we go to the Flyer region, and we have the number 2 seed, Bernie Parent from 1973-74, taking on the number 7 seed, Eric Lindros from 95-96. First, it was Bernie. He was an all-star, all-NHL, won the Vezina Trophy, 47 wins that year, led the league, played in like 70 games or something crazy like that, almost never took a day off, had 93.2% save percentage, 1.89 goals against, led the league with been both, had 12 shutouts, led all goalies, like I said, in games played, which just was insane, leading the Flyers to their first ever Stanley Cup and winning his first of 2 straight Conn Smythe trophies. Meanwhile, Eric Lindros in 1995-96, he was an all-star, scored 115 points, 47 goals, 68 assists, 15 power play goals, 4 game winners. Flyers were the number 1 seed before getting bounced by the Panthers in the conference semifinals. During that playoff run, Eric Lindros had 6 goals and 6 assists. Not necessarily his best performance, but he would come back the following year to lead them to the Stanley Cup. Now it's your turn. Whose season was better? Bernie Parent in 1973-74, Eric Lindros in 1995-96. Get your vote in. Same way, Discord, Back to the Future voice and text line, any social media. Let me know whose season was better. I'm going to give a shout out to our proud partner, Lotwin. Get your 3D custom hype chain from Lotwin. Go check them out, lotwin.com, and then use the promo code TCCPOD to take 10% off of your order. All right, on this day in 2014, Sixers select Joel Embiid, number 3 overall. And then in 1996, they took Allen Iverson, number 1 overall. We will have more on the Sixers' second-round draft. The Phillies, as they look to salvage a game and maybe even score a run against the Astros down in Houston. Tomorrow, we spend Fridays with AI. Remember, I'll be on location again. And don't forget, tomorrow, it's NHL draft day, so we'll start looking ahead and see what the prospective picks and where the Flyers can go. I expect Danny Briere to be wheeling and dealing. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for June 26, 2025. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Thursday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.